and welcome to our virtual teaching talks. We're gonna share a strategy that's working very well in their class, and they can see positive results with their students. And Sarika Wacker, you're gonna be talking about student-centered teaching tips in online classes.
Okay. My name is Zorica Wacker. I go by Z. I teach at the IBIT. I am an adjunct for now 13 years at IBIT, but I've been teaching much longer. I teach in marketing and in business technology system programs. So I would like to start with kind of key terms from the literature, the balance of power and role of instructor, function of content, responsibility for learning, concept checks, and just-in-time teaching. All of these and many more are in the literature of student-centered learning. But in general, what we are all trying to do is to create classroom as a collaborative environment where students are participants. They are not just, they're active, they're not just participants, passive participants. So students should be given choice how and to the degree what they learn, and to find a direct connection, I think we all showed, and you will see in my tips, between instruction material that we are kind of instructional material and their own interest and actually real life experiences. So that's kind of the, you know, nutshell of the student-centered learning. That's very demanding, frankly. I think you know, we can be experienced and we can have material prepared, but it's very demanding on the instructors because we really are trying to combine intended outcomes or goals, and also to try to see how the students learn, so their own individual characteristics, and puts a lot of demand on instructor. As for the balance of power, we know that in the student-centered learning, the power needs to go out from the instructor towards the students as much as we can. And usually, and I think I've heard that from even Heidi's at the beginning of her, the very first class, what I do in my online and in class is actually I'm asking them, come back to the next class and tell me what would you like this class to be and how to kind of have some kind of dynamics. So we are also trying to move from that students are actually, to give the role of instructor, the traditional towards the students, because in general, we are choosing the content, we are giving the kind of dynamics or schedule, and at the end, we are evaluating their work. So in traditional classroom, we kind of rely that they will just record a bunch of information that we kind of present in front of them. In SCL, I believe we all agree that students and instructors, but students also need to take ownership of their learning. As for the function of the content, the second kind of key phrase, and I think it is if it's unimagined, and by the way, I do teach in these, especially marketing classes, and even in BTS, there's a lot of content, amount kind of, and sometimes students go to the last resort, which is called memorization, instead of trying to conceptualize some of those main point and apply them. So in some of the assessments, we could end up with, especially even with the quizzes, end up kind of like asking them to memorize instead of really or to reproduce whatever we provided to them. So function of content is really should be changed in these our classrooms. Responsibility for learning, besides students' responsibility, instructor actually should definitely use technology for interactivity, for timely feedback, and I will give in a second those kind of in practice, and for better engagement with students. So it's not just, hey, the students are taking a little bit more and we feel responsible. We should really try to use all possible technology tools to keep them engaged. Concept checks, in any environment, student-centered learning or none, we kind of want concept checks to actually enhance the traditional way of considering the content. They should help focus on what was presented, on what the students kind of retain. But in student-centered learning classroom, students should, after the content is covered, and we do discuss at the end of the class, opportunity even between them to get to refine and to negotiate some terms. Also, that's a good point for instructor to, or good space to see if there's some things that needs to be worked more in depth. And I always laughed about the just-in-time teaching because of just-in-time, whatever manufacturing concept. But just-in-time teaching is extremely hard and actually really requires that students read before the lecture. And I'll tell you in a second how I do this in online classroom. And they are usually those short answers or multiple kind of choice questions that actually should serve two purposes. Prepare students for whatever is coming as a main content, and also to give instructor a little bit feedback if now just before the lecture. So you will see I really spend a lot of time before class meetings, which are mostly class discussion online, that I realized if the answers are telling me there's something is very difficult in that upcoming kind of topic that I need to address more in depth. So by saying all of this, after seeing all of these things, let's see how I kind of do this in practice. When I've been teaching for BTS, Business Technology System programs now for 12 years. And maybe most student-centered learning classes are actually in the special group of classes that started to be implemented in winter 2013. And we call them CBO, which really in the literature are called competency-based education kind of classes. Course structure allows extremely big flexibility. Students actually, I would say 50% of my students finish class earlier. There is a prior learning also component there. So if they have some skills, they kind of, that's why they can move and progress faster. If not, they need to finish in that kind of quarter boundary. Project-based content. Most of, I would say 95% of our content is project-based, meaning if it's Excel, you really need to solve the business problem with Excel, even if it's a Word or PowerPoint, how you're gonna implement PowerPoint for specific and specific. So it's really, there is a business scenario for everything. We are lucky that we can offer various formats of content, from ebook, videos, simulations, interactive quizzes, and of course these projects. So, and 6 out of 7 these classes actually offered industry recognized assessments, which means yes, there is a final project defined fully in the syllabus and from the beginning of the quarter, but there is also industry recognized. In our cases for 6 classes, there's a different type of Microsoft Office certification. Well, in the spring of this year, academic year, it's actually, yeah, it's still that year, in 2020, I started to teach marketing courses. And there, I did require reading quizzes prior to main topic, and we usually would meet on Tuesday afternoon. So, and I would review, these were self-graded Canvas quizzes. I build them easily, but the problem will be, I wanted also to see their answers so that I can apply when I see them in the Zoom space, that we can discuss something that was maybe more difficult, so that we can really kind of address confusions or what is the difference between primary and secondary data. So that requires a lot of just-in-time teaching, but it's actually very helpful. Group projects in these marketing classes. It's really apply what you learned. I mean, that's something that even Heidi, when she sent students at the kind of field, And it's the most difficult part is actually I'm giving them flexibility to define the research problem and the research question. And that's kind of hard, but you know, now in this COVID-19 situation, in the normal classes, they would have actually a real client. Out of 11 groups in one of my class, only 2 have access to school of music school and to video kind of production. All the rest 9 groups actually have to choose what they like, company they like, and then to define research problems. I definitely suggest to I kind of tried to see how the other colleagues did before this when I was prepping. I broke down even in more phases, and not just 4. I kind of broke down group projects into as many spaces, you know, kind of like chunks or scaffolding, so they can really kind of, it's easier on students. I do believe the main I was so surprised that in the course evaluations, I'm not going to put on the screen, students said that extremely helpful for their learning was timely feedback, 95%, I mean, just timely feedback. But that requires really, again, on instructor, put a lot of pressure. Saturday submission, I give them by Tuesday my feedback. There are other stuff that they're working, individual projects, these quizzes, and then they can maybe next Saturday provide the phase 2, or let's say some phases were in the space of 2 kind of weeks. Heads up, absolutely. For example, one phase says collect data and provide data analysis. If you say that as a phase and with all description, they still gonna kind of wait, you know, for Wednesday to start to do the survey. And so no, I kind of really am pushing them with a lot of heads up through Canvas announcements, not just the class meetings. And those class meetings are mostly like, again, collaborative questions. It's not like, okay, now I'm gonna lecture. Absolutely not. There's so many videos and resources in Canvas. But I do provide heads up that I'm telling them, listen, that seems so straightforward, but that requires at least 10 days of your kind of gathering information, processing, cleaning data, and then provide analysis. Discussions. I actually have so much in common to share that Heidi and Tatiana mentioned, because in discussions, I asked them, share at least 2 more sources you found relevant to the group project. I just couldn't believe how well, and these are from videos to scholarly papers. I mean, and there were industry papers, and it's just like, I get like you know, I started to compile all of them because they were really gathering. And that little glitch, I always put in discussion, they cannot see other people's reply until they post their own, because that requires a little bit more of kind of sit around computer and do the, you know, kind of checking online research. So it was not really only just YouTube. Actually, even there, they were very selective and trying to do a little bit more scholarly. Group work, actually, I spent one portion of that class meeting talking about what are really high functioning teams. Because we kind of all assume, and by the way, I do have professionals there, and we do have also, so it's a kind of various like heterogeneous groups of people. But I do remind them of those 5 phases of the highly functioning, like forming, storming, then norming, then performing, and then adjourning. I also asked them to do self-assessment of collaborative skills at the beginning of the quarter. I have one nicely done rubric based on some, you know, kind of scholarly evaluate, very simple. Do like, where are you now with this I am developing, I am mastering. And then I asked them to share with the teammates. So, because their teammates need to see whom they are dealing with. Then I asked them to redo that just before the last phase of the project, the final group project. Peer reviews are required. That's one way to actually practice that. for both individual and group projects. And I emphasize extremely that final version of their presentation and data and everything, reports, should integrate not just my comments kind of changes, but also peer reviewers. And I ask actually for substantive peer reviews. I learned that long ago. Sometimes people say, great job, you know. No, I ask them to do two commendations and two recommendations because they're gonna get the points for that. So I think I'm looking at the clock. A couple of more. I really believe in strong communication. I don't know how many C's I can put: communicate, communicate, communicate. What I do as the first kind of assignment, besides tell me how would you like this class and syllabus confirmation, I've asked them to fill out a short survey to tell me their preferred name, preferred gender pronoun, major. It is important for us. I don't, because they're coming from different majors. Could be from marketing, could be from information systems, could be from business. And I asked them, please tell me anything you would like me to know that might impact your learning. Interesting, on that April 8, I would already got, I just lost my job. Second was, I'm now the only who are working. My parents lost their jobs. So even the life happens during the quarter, but I really find this extremely useful in communication and kind of knowing what's, you know, learning more about each student. I'm grateful that integrated student services started progress reports in the first week of the quarter. I did this. I reported on a couple of students who were kind of not doing any work, and they really contacted them. All progress report, I actually was trying for years to ask all of BC various programs to do bi-weekly, not just 1 month kind of progress report, because that's a little bit late. Weekly course updates every Monday morning for each of my online class, or doesn't need to be, I do weekly class updates. I tell them what we did good last week. I don't tell what we did bad. I mean, if I have to deal with it, but I kind of say, okay, we did this in the end, a little heads up, even though that we're gonna meet. Canvas communications and progress tracking tools. I used a lot Canvas course analytics, especially if the student started well, and then I get kind of no work submitted and since they introduced this Gradebook feature, message student who, I've been using that like, so something is this Saturday, on Monday morning, they didn't submit, I'm reaching out, it's there you will see on the screens. So I put this, if just in case, I was not sure who is in the audience, I see that we are all skillful here, but it's so on the homepage, view course analytics, and I actually I don't go down immediately. I kind of see my activities and see submissions as a collective. This is from one of my classes. But then at the bottom, of course, we have a student, and you can click on each of them. And this is when I kind of, I hid here their names, but if I would click on particular name, I would see when was the last time they logged in on Canvas. And then, so that would be a big kind of early alert, like, hey, I need to reach out to this student and see why, you know, but even with this little statistic, you can see some students view 500 pages, and some of them spend like 1,400 page views. And now, Gradebook feature is so useful. Canvas people, the staff who development team of Canvas, at the beginning, they have less options, but the most important option is the haven't submit yet. And also, if I know some students, like they said, I'm working night shift, and then can I submit, or I work a couple of days, if they get extension, then I can eliminate now. It was not just group message to, you can really target 3 or 4 students who I know that for some reason they didn't communicate why they actually didn't submit, what could be the problem. So we can also, you probably know that you can edit the subject line, which I don't want to scare all of them, What is also good about Canvas announcements and this is they go straight to their personal emails. So honest to God, they don't always answer Bellevue College emails. Some students are very good, but I think they rely a lot of those notifications either on the phone or iPad or any of these. And the final remarks, I would say we really need to be present in our kind of classes, stay available to students. I know that it's hard, but I am even on the weekends, I prioritize, but so any kind of this, Zoom, Teams, Skype, I provide all, even for the groups. I said you can use groups in collaboration in the Canvas, you can do Teams, I explained how to do Teams if they want Skype, text, they have different apps for group work, but we also need to be kind of connected with them. And honest, I just think based on what I've heard today, I think this last bullet, I sent this yesterday, so I didn't want to have the discrepancy between my slides. I would get rid of, but I think we all know that our classroom is actually a collaborative environment. And we should try to remind ourselves, even when we are exasperated or tired, hey, somebody really needs help, and let's kind of help facilitate that learning. So thank you very much. And now if you have any question for me, I'm open for answers.
Thank you so much, Z. One of the things you mentioned and that I like is about instructor presence, being there. I think especially our underserved students, they're more likely to drop our class and more now in these times. I think that's really important. Very nice how you emphasize that. Mm-hmm. Any other comments or questions for the rest of the group, please?
I also appreciate how you tied in the whole, not just at the beginning of the quarter, but throughout the quarter, doing those check-ins and using course analytics to really see maybe if someone performed well at the beginning and then has kind of dropped off. So just staying abreast of that, I think that's really key in these online environments, especially the asynchronous,
Mm-hmm.
when we're not meeting via Zoom with our students and so forth. I think that's a great tool.
Thank you.
We still can connect to it. Oh, sorry, Heidi.
It's okay. As far as checking in goes, what's interesting to me is I think you have to be super explicit. I don't know. I have to change things for fall quarter because one of the things that I saw a lot on my student evaluations was because I did it asynchronous and students said they really wish they had an opportunity to talk to me. Mm-hmm. And I had office hours every day from 1 to 4. And the first day 2 students came and nobody came after that. But they felt like they didn't have a chance to check in, whereas I felt like I was completely available to them, right? Yeah. So I think I know I need to be more explicit. I'm thinking in the fall, maybe I'm just going to have a mandatory weekly check-in or something like that. So to remind them that I'm there.
Yeah, I think so too, because I was scheduled to teach this marketing class in the classroom. I would get email before the quarter starts. Or are we meeting, kind of at least one, it was scheduled twice a week, Tuesday, Thursdays. So I did kind of say Tuesday. Now, there are a few of them that couldn't come again because of work or something, but I think mandatory one, next fall, I will teach marketing 262. I will also make mandatory. But there are students who, like you said, and even office hours, I would have on Thursday office hours, like you said, Heidi, will be 3 students out of 33, so that's 10% now, but they did come once a week at least. And it doesn't need to be lecture, honest, it's just more, did you guys read? Do you have, prepare the questions besides the quizzes,
Yeah, I really resonate with what just 2 of you just shared about the office hours, because at the end of the day, no matter how great how well we design our curriculum, it's also really important how we help the student connect to with the dots, right? How we scaffold all these great assignments and activities. So I think for me, I have similar struggle with office hour. I think it's really important that we explain to students the value and the reason why office hours are very important, because to them, especially for first generation college students, they feel very intimidated with the idea of, making kind of individual contact with their professor. And if we, so we can offer extra credits, for example, and I, explain in writing that, this is a great way to help you problem solve and build relationships with the professor. And give them some numbers, like students who actually attend office hour regularly, statistically, turn out to be doing better. So I think, just like Haley was saying, being explicit about our reasonings, why we want to encourage to do them, and create some incentives for, for that, it's also important. Yeah.
I think, Archana and Jen, I used to do take a selfie in front of the IBIT office. I'm an adjunct, I don't have my own office, but at least, they can come to IBIT and see. So, but now since we are in COVID situation, am I right? But we should do extra, that was my extra credit, take the selfie, 5 points out of, 1,000, but students do like extra credit. I think we all agree. Mm-hmm. It's just a little, I don't know why, but everybody jumps. And at the end of the quarter, is there any other extra credit opportunity? Kind of like shy student will say, anything else that I can, so I think office hours are important, knowing that they are for them.
So one of the things I wanted to share was that last week my students did not come to my office hours through Zoom. So yesterday I sent an email, hey, I'm here, see you soon. And actually 3 students came. So I think sometimes we might have to be intentional. Sometimes students read it in the syllabus, but they're still afraid. Does she really mean that? And I think by sending that email 1 hour before, oh yeah, she's there. And yeah. I think I'm gonna do that every time I have the office hour. That's just a strategy.
Oh yeah.
One student shared with me today, I had the same thing where, Archana, like you, where I started sending them my office hour like 30 minutes before. Here's the link, right? And I got much better attendance. And one student suggested to me, she's like, can you put it on our calendar? And I don't know, I didn't think about that. I just put it in the announcements, and then maybe you guys already do this, but I was like, oh yeah, I should, because it came up kind of spontaneously, some of the office hour times. So I just announced it. I didn't actually physically put it on the calendar. And that seemed to, putting it on the calendar, it pings them, right? So it reminds them, hey, she said, so I was like, well, that's a great suggestion. So I started doing that, and that seemed to increase the office hour too.
On the Canvas calendar?
Huh?
Did you put it on Canvas calendar?
Yeah,
or
Canvas calendar. So it gives them a notification.
Because I believe that's great. I don't do that, but Allison, thank you. Because I think how they operate on calendar. When I was seeing them in the classroom, I said, okay, some of them said, I spent time design modules and, we can Canvas wiki page, you kind of, no, I think they first react on that, and then they go, if they don't know how to do the homework assignment, then not all of them, they're stellar students, but I think that's a great idea for students. So Allison, thank you. I think Canvas calendar is actually another source that they rely.
I have another question, if you don't mind. It's kind of for everybody. I asked somebody privately, and they're like, ask everybody. But it relates to what you were saying, Z, about getting to know your students. So for some of my assignments, I can tell that the students did them, but I also am pretty sure that for some assignments, the students weren't doing them. Like I had a student in the last 2 weeks of the quarter went from not being able to write a full sentence to writing a beautiful 2-page paper or reflection. And have any of you come up with any strategies for making sure that a student has done their own work? Or can we? Is there a way to even do that?
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. So this is something that comes up in my composition classes a lot because,
I was thinking of you, yeah, for writing.
So, yeah, plagiarism is a serious issue. And from my experience could happen, I tend to want to see my student from the positive light, but it does happen. So I'm not sure whether you're aware of the plagiarism kind of built-in tool in Canvas called VeriCite.
Sure, but this is like in a reflection.
Yeah.
So they're writing about a movie. So I was kind of like, well, I know somebody watched the movie and wrote about it, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't my student who did it. So it's not really applicable to Vericite because it's personal feelings about the movie.
I've had students who hire, those companies that write essays for them. So then the Vericite doesn't help because it's not really, yeah. But what I've done actually in the past, not now, I haven't had this happen, hopefully online, but I asked the student to come to my office hour and I asked them questions about the paper, and I remember the first question I asked was, can you summarize the Lancet article? Like, can you tell me the main idea of the Lancet article? This was a neuroscience class. Lancet article is, and the student looked at me and said, what is Lancet? And that's when I knew, of course, students had not only had he not written the paper, he had not even read it.
Yeah, so yeah, just maybe to finish sharing my part here, I think part of it is definitely utilizing the tools we have, but part of it is also to be informative and educational and preventive with them. So like I start talking about plagiarism with them from first day on, of course, depending on the time and space you have in your own class. I think sometimes it's, intentional. Sometimes it's because of some intercultural differences that students have a hard time grasping where the line is in terms of plagiarism, right? Talk about paraphrasing versus summarizing versus quote citing, direct quoting. So I think there's some space for us to scaffold that. But yeah, if we think about the most extreme cases where they hire someone professional to write for them, I would say that's still relatively rare. Most of the time, the Vericite seem to be decent in detecting anything they pull from online or sources and from even their previous writing in the course and etc.
So I have a 12-year-old and I was talking to his teachers and they were saying, even with the online schooling, they very clearly got assignments that the parents had completed. And talking to a friend of mine, her son is a senior. She said, she's a teacher. She said, it's the first time I've ever done an assignment because I just wanted my son to pass. He was a senior and he wasn't doing his work. So she said, I did his project for him just so he would graduate from high school, right? But I can't figure out a way. I don't even know if there is a way other than what you were suggesting about office hours, but then they don't have to show up for that even, right? How you would prevent them.
I had this in marketing class, but we actually have a papers, data in the popular culture, for example, in the marketing analytics. And actually, they didn't know that there is a veracity behind. So they, 3 or 4 have more than 30%. And it's not that they were citing, so I really kind of called them and they were kind of okay, kind of to redo. I allowed redo for the first time, if they, and it was not more than 30%. It was kind of in that yellow. But I had a student who admitted finally, like for the data set, I was just trying, there was something confusing and in one group, and they let one student who was providing some data, I was thinking it's from the restaurant, and finally he said, I lied. He really said, I said, you don't have to lie, you don't have to create data set. That's the misunderstanding, because you guys don't have access to the client. There are some other sources that we can, there's some modification, but they sometimes, as I said, and I'm just like, gosh, he was ashamed. I was thinking it's clear that if only 2 groups have a real clients, then left 9 of them really have an imaginable kind, even if that's existing, I don't know, American Eagle, they use the fashion. But I think the only thing that I'm thinking when you said that about seniors, I think we should not put a lot of points on that. You see what I'm saying? So that if there is, when we know that we don't know who is doing the work, we, learn on our, we tweak, we learn, guys, this student really was so, almost I just even wanted through Zoom to tell him, it's okay, you don't need to lie. I mean, don't lie, just, I wanted to tell him, you misunderstood everything. But I don't think we should put a lot of specific weight on those assignments. If we are, that's the only thing. Other than that, like you said, you know, my sister did the homework. I'm just like, for my niece, I'm just like, don't do that. I mean, well, it's easier. It's not easier, you know.
Yeah,
Yes.
it makes cheating harder than doing the honest work. And you know, another idea for Hades scenario is that explain the stakes of, you know, cheating, plagiarism to students, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm harsh. I helped
Yeah.
co-edit the division cheating policy, and I tell my students I report everybody. There is no second chance. Like my students know I am a very hardliner on cheating, but in this case, like I actually talked to Sue Nightingale about it, and she said you just have to let it go. You just have to assume they did it in this case and just let it go. And it was low stakes.
Yeah, pick our fight battle.
If I may add something, I wanted to mention math is different, but what we do, math instructors, we really ask them to send us their work with detailed solutions. And what Tanya Kahi mentioned, we can see this work for some solutions is too advanced, probably given to them through software, or if it was not monitor test. But I started doing what Tony is doing. I just tell them, you know what? I know your work is probably not yours. I know when a student's work is presented and when some other resources are used. So I wanted to let you know I'm aware. And I had few students stepping forward and they mentioned what I did, and according to what it was, I made decisions.
I got an A on my son's algebra test, Tatiana, so, you know.
Yeah, but there's not much we can do, but at least I tell them I'm aware.
I was just checking his work though. I didn't actually do it. I just checked all his answers before he submitted them.
I wanted to say that my daughter's taking a geometry class online at the UW through the Young Scholars program. One thing I saw, and maybe I could do this, I'm not sure if it's equitable, but they have to do their math test through Zoom with their video on. So maybe they're checking in Google, but at least they know their parents are not helping them. And the professor's looking at them. So I can sneak and see her test. And I said, I think this is great. So after they do their test, then they have to do the CAM picture and submit it. Maybe I should do that with my students for their short essay.
And you can use responders. Yeah, have you used responders? I'm using responders to record
no, I have not. Thank you.
Yeah, but still, although I recorded, I want to see their work. So I kind of ways.
And maybe one other thing is if it's a reflection piece, maybe they could videotape themselves on their smartphone.
That's too much work for me.
And instead of submitting something written, and then you know that they're the one that's actually expressing the thought, as opposed to, you know, having somebody else write it for them.
Yeah, so like a 2-minute video response, what you thought about it.
Yeah,
that's a good idea.
You know.
I mean, Heidi, you can always make the decision, or any of us can make the decision to, you know, pick one assessment, you know, one writing assignment that you'll choose to proctor using, you know, like Honor Lock will actually take a picture of your face and you have to show your ID. So, and nobody else can come into the video during that time. So, and you don't have to check it. They will check for you. And so in terms of time, if you want to pick one assessment to do that, and it's, you know, and it's worth substantially enough so that, you know, so they know that they have to do their work, then, you know, that might, I don't like using proctoring software, but if, you know, if you have to end up doing that because of cheating, then.
So for the assessments that I did, so for example, plants, you could just find a plant picture on the internet, and I wasn't going to verify every single one. So all of them had to be dated. So they took a picture of it and then there's a date on it. Now, of course, they could fake that as well, but it's more work, right? And then like the art project, the recycled art, they could also do it. So that picture I showed you was, the students actually vote for extra credit on the best one. So that's the picture they posted there, but they had a separate site where they had to take their picture with their artwork. So I could see that they hadn't just taken a picture from the internet, but they didn't share that with everybody. So I tried to get around some of those things, but the writing one, I ended up being like, okay, well, somebody learned about the importance of corals. I don't know who it was, but somebody watched the movie and learned. So my job is done, I guess.
Thank you so much. We are finishing our virtual teaching talk.